As the school year starts here in the United States, millions of American students head to university with high hopes that a degree will be the ticket to a brighter future and better salaries. But more and more experts are saying that college is not for everyone and that many high-paying jobs, which don't require a college degree, are going unfilled. The cost of going to college here in the United States and in many places around the world continues to rise. The cost of tuition at public four-year institutions increased 36.7% from 2010 to 2023. After adjusting for currency inflation, college tuition has increased 197.4% since 1963. These students at George Washington University need no reminder.
I'm going for mechanical engineering. That's cost with scholarships. It's probably around $60,000 all told. Yeah, that's after scholarships.
I think it's around like 85, 90,000 for school.
The whole thing?
No, for tuition. Yeah, like housing and everything included, pretty much.
Wow,
per year.
And today's students don't just have to compete with other students for jobs when they graduate. Now they must also contend with artificial intelligence, which is already replacing many entry-level jobs that new graduates used to perform.
I would definitely say I'm worried, specifically because AI would mostly affect entry-level positions specifically. Research or very quick memo writing or things like that, that usually are what entry-level attorneys do. It's not going to replace, the partners, the people who have that wealth of experience and connections and things like that, or the senior attorneys, but it might make it harder for people to even get into the industry to start developing those skills.
Adding to worries about money and AI, the political and cultural environment at United States colleges. Pro-Palestinian demonstrations have resulted in the federal government making accusations of anti-Semitism. The Trump administration has cut funding to universities such as Harvard and forced the resignations of 4 Ivy League university presidents.
The truth here is that our government, the American government, is attacking higher ed and the university.
Foreign students in the United States have also been under pressure, with visa restrictions and requirements to show their social media posts. However, the U.S. president has recently toned down his rhetoric.
And you know what would happen if they didn't? Our college system would go to hell very quickly. You'd have, and it wouldn't be the top colleges. It would be colleges that struggle on the bottom. And you take out 300,000 or 600,000 students out of the system.
According to Pew Research, just 22% of U.S. adults say the cost of college is worth it if someone has taken out loans, and while incomes tend to be higher for college graduates over time. Non-college workers have seen their wages rise faster in recent years. A college degree is still vital to enter many professions, from medicine to engineering to the law, but the costs are going up and the rewards less obvious to those with diplomas. Let's bring in our guests. Here in Washington, D.C., Imani Cheers is a cultural curator and professor of digital storytelling at George Washington University. From Maryland, Robert Lerman is chairman at Apprenticeships for America and Emeritus professor of economics at American University. Ryan Craig is managing director at Achieve Partners and author of the book Apprentice Nation: How the Earn and Learn Alternative to Higher Education Will Create a Stronger and Fairer America. He joins us from Los Angeles. And from Portland in Oregon, Yan Liang is chair professor in economics at Willamette University. Thanks, everyone, for being with us. Ryan Craig, let me start with you. Since 1990, the number of students at U.S. universities has grown by 6 million. That's about 30%. According to an article in the Washington Post, that's due to what the Post calls degree inflation. That's when you have job openings that unnecessarily need a degree. And one example that's cited is a company that had a job opening for a person driving around selling hot dogs. The job paid $35,000, but it required a degree. So what do you make of this degree inflation? I mean, is it a waste of resources and money?
Well, I think degree inflation is part of it, but I think the bigger issue is that we've dramatically overinvested in tuition-based, debt-based, classroom-based career launch infrastructure, and we've dramatically underinvested in work-based, earn and learn career launch infrastructure. So there's really only been one path to economic mobility in this country over the last 30 plus years. And as a result, students graduate from high school and they have a choice. They can either go to college or they can go to work at Chipotle. And we don't really have opportunities to work and earn your way up to a middle or upper middle class lifestyle. And that's because we haven't invested in the necessary infrastructure.
So, Ryan, with the alternative to going to university be more practical-oriented courses, the kinds of things that are done at many community colleges, for instance?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Vocational training, which would start with career and technical education at the high school level. But I think even more than that, obviously, apprenticeship, right? It's actually the oldest pathway. Apprenticeships existed before colleges and universities. And they're still the preferred way to mobility in the building trades. And the reason for that is that apprenticeships are great ways to learn to use tools. And guess what? In the digital economy, we're all using tools, software platforms, SaaS platforms. These are all tools that need to be learned, and apprenticeships are actually great for that.
Robert Lerman, let's look a little bit at the other side of that argument. There's a study that showed that by 2031, 2 out of 3 people believe that to get a good job, you will have to have a bachelor's degree. That study was done by a university, but is it a sign that people believe that you should have a degree? I mean, has that become a little bit too entrenched in our minds?
No, well, yeah, it has a long history, as Ryan pointed out. The whole idea of sort of college for all, even when we were trying to develop new pathways, a lot of the experts or policy people emphasized the degree, and that these other options were just a way of thinking about how to enter the degree. The degrees are very good for some people and for many jobs, and pay off for many people in many jobs. The problem has been that, as Ryan said, we haven't diversified the pathways, and we haven't invested in how to achieve quality outcomes for people entering careers outside the college pathway. And even the community college pathways have largely failed many, many people. Graduation rates are extremely low. Earnings outcomes are not great for 2-year degree programs. For some they are, for certain nursing and other careers, they're pretty good, but for many they are not. And so we just really haven't diversified the pathways.
And Robert, I mean, is there a sort of prestige that's attached to getting a degree without regards for what that's going to get you? I mean, I was looking at some of the things that were written about post-war Germany and post-war Japan, where they had very well thought out, well-researched aptitude programs for people coming out of high school, and they ran them through these tests and said, look, you're suited for this, you're not suited for that.
Yeah, there is a prestige element, but I want to correct one thing, and that is that everyone really believes that this is the only pathway. There was a survey done of parents, and they were asked, would you prefer your child to go through a 4-year degree, even with free tuition, or a 3-year apprenticeship into a good field? Now, the parents, both of whom had degrees, strongly preferred the 4-year degree, as did some of the other parents. But most people who, especially those parents who did not have 4-year degrees, preferred the apprenticeship route. And that's because it has a greater certainty, because don't have to spend a number of years not earning much, what we call foregone earnings.
Right.
And you have to pay a lot during those years for a somewhat uncertain future.
Imani, cheers. There was a survey, just to show us where opinions are all over the place. There was a survey from Pew Research which showed that 49% of adults in the United States don't believe a 4-year degree is important to get a job. 32% think it is important to get a degree. Does that tell us that people don't value a degree as much right now?
Well, I think it's a really interesting poll. And of course, with all polls, I never know who is being asked these questions because I think there's a larger conversation that we're not having, which is the value of an education as a form of critical thinking. As someone who has been in higher education for the last 12 years, I have 3 degrees. And arguably, could I have also equally been as successful if I did not have 3 degrees? Sure, because a lot of things when we're looking at come from everything from a person's work ethic, a person's, intuition and ingenuity. And you don't have to. We look at, some of the wealthiest people on the planet are individuals that did not complete 4-year degrees. So I think the larger conversation is about critical thinking. What happens when you get a higher education degree? What happens at the bachelor, master's, or even doctorate, law, medical level? We all know that we appreciate degrees, especially if you need someone with it. If you go to your doctor in any field, or your dentist or someone, you want to make sure that they have the necessary training, the necessary education that you don't necessarily get from a trade program. Same way if you want someone who's going to be an electrician or a plumber coming into your home and fixing something, you want to make sure that they have the necessary training required for that. So whether it's a trade or a 4-year, sometimes even up to 8-year degree, I think the most important thing we're looking at is, do you value critical thinking skills, and do you value the access to information, which comes in the form of education?
Right. Yang Liang, what are your thoughts on that? Imani raises a good point there. And education does give us the ability to think critically. It might not give us a skill, but it does give us that.
Yeah, well, good to be with you, Anand, and all the panelists. And so just a little background, right? I work in the liberal arts college, and I firmly believe that liberal arts education and also college education in general are really foundational because these education really focus on 4 parts: the body of knowledge, foundational skills like the critical thinking, logical reasoning, effective communication, these foundational skills, and ethics, right, in terms of civic knowledge and engagements, and last but not least, really integration and lifelong learning. So I think these 4 pillars that underpin, college education is not only important for a functional economy, but really, I think, for democracy, right, for a society in general. And from a more practical, point of view, I think employers do appreciate, all these skills, right? These foundational skills. They're adaptable, they're transferable. It helps with problem solving, creativity, and it's really useful when it comes to adapt to the ever evolving workforce and also technologically integrated career. So I think, these are all very important. Now, that said, I do understand a lot of obstacles, especially how expensive college has become. But I think the key here is to make college more affordable, more inclusive, rather than really to question, I think, some of the very important values that college education, offers.
Yeah, speaking about the cost of education, I mean, some universities could cost as much as $100,000 annually to get a degree. That survey that I was talking about, the Pew Research survey, Yan Liang, it also found that 47% of adults say a degree is worth it as long as a student doesn't have to take out loans. One of the other problems is that have some universities become a bit like a business, a profit-making center?
Right, absolutely. Not all colleges is created equal.
Yeah.
But I think again, for the tuition, problem, we also need to look at the lifelong learning potentials of all college graduates. When you look at compared to the college graduates versus high school diploma holders, back in 2023, the former earns about 70% more than the latter. And also when it comes to unemployment rate, again, bachelor holders, the unemployment rate is twice lower than non-college degree holders. So I think there's still a lot of career potentials and earning potentials that I think would make college education affordable. But again, that said, I do believe that tuitions are the problem, right? That student loan debt has been increasingly a crippling, factor for college education. So I do think that, we need to make college education really a necessity, not a privilege, because when you look at the numbers, again, the survey shows that 70% of the jobs will require, trainings or education beyond high school by 2027. So I think we need to prepare the next generation of young people to be able to get college degrees or other degrees.
All right, Ryan, let me get your view on what Yan Liang and Imani chairs have been talking about, the fact that you do need a foundational kind of education to move ahead in life. I get the point that, vocational education is great, but what about the arguments that they make?
Well, first of all, I want to question some of the numbers that Jan just provided to us, because it's now the case that just recently the unemployment rate for recent college graduates is actually higher than for non-college graduates. Something like 12% of 20-something college graduates are now unemployed, and 52% of recent college graduates are underemployed. So if you add those two numbers together, a significant majority, perhaps a supermajority of young people who 5 years ago or so made the decision to enroll in a bachelor's program have experienced a negative outcome. Either they haven't completed or they've graduated and haven't achieved the employment outcome they're looking for. And the reason for that is simple, which is that the digital transformation has changed the economy and higher ed has not kept up. I think colleges and universities are doing as good a job as they've ever done at equipping young people with the cognitive skills and durable skills that they need. And there's no question, to your point, they need those skills. The question is, do they need to invest 4 to 6 years and $100,000 or more in those skills at that time? Or is there an earn and learn pathway that will allow them at lower financial risk and greater economic and employment certainty to gain both the technical skills and cognitive skills and durable skills that they need over time? And the answer is, yes, there is. We just haven't invested in the infrastructure we need to build those pathways.
Yan Liang, what is your response to that? If you could keep it brief, please. The fact that Ryan's making the point that the unemployment rate among people with degrees is higher than than the national average, which is 4.2% right now.
Right. Well, this is the youth unemployment rate, right? 10.5% as of August. And I think, Jerome Powell has talked about this. These Gen Z's hiring now is a nightmare, according to him. Well, I think that has to do not just because of AI technologies, it does replace some entry-level jobs, but more important, I think, is the current very uncertain economic environment. It leads to this low hiring, low firing environment, which makes it very difficult for college graduates to locate a job. But I think over the long term, I think college degree still pays off.
All right, let me go back to Robert. Robert, there was a recent report from the Burning Glass Institute and Strata Education Foundation, which says that 52% of recent college graduates are underemployed, not using whatever skills they obtained at university. Now, there are 750,000 unfilled industrial jobs here in the United States, and we have the White House telling us all the time that they want to reshore all these industrial jobs back to the United States. So, does this perhaps require a new approach to how people are trained after high school?
It certainly does. But I want to correct one misimpression, which is that these other methods of learning about careers do not teach critical thinking. A good program that involves workplace learning not only teaches critical skills, but it teaches them in the context of the real world and not in an isolated ivory tower kind of situation, which many higher education institutions find themselves. So I think it's a mistake to believe that only through a four-year degree can you get those critical thinking skills. The administration has highlighted the need for more well-trained people in fields that they want to reshore. The problem is that they haven't yet invested, still hoping they will, in what, as what Ryan says, is the infrastructure for building out high-level apprenticeship programs and other skill-based earning and learning models. So that requires a lot of effort, requires a new structure. It requires rewarding efforts to help employers build these programs. And many people are trying to do that. Some states are trying to do it at a modest level, but we really need federal leadership to make it happen at scale.
Imani, I want to get back to your point that you raised about getting critical thinking skills, about learning logical thinking, etc. It's not an either-or situation, is it? It can be done in one place, couldn't it?
It can be, and I didn't think I needed to, but I will clarify that no one is. I am not saying that the only place to get critical thinking skills is higher education. I would hope that some of those skill sets begin in the home. So well before you get into an educational or a trade place, that you are being taught. We are all embracing everything from civility to critical thinking. So you can get these skills in other places. I think as the panelists have mentioned, which I 100% agree, as someone who was on faculty at George Washington University, it's one of the most expensive universities in the country, that the cost is what's really, we're talking here about some economic returns, and if you invest in yourself, in your training. And so whatever that may be, if you were someone, as I mentioned before, who was going into a trade, someone who is going to be, an electrician or a plumber, you have to invest in yourself. You have to buy equipment. You have to go through your training. And the same way, if you're going into a university setting, you are investing in the area that you find interesting. And so whether that be something from a liberal arts degree or to something that's a little more specialized, I think the importance is, what is that investment? How are you going to get that return? And where can you gain the necessary training to pursue the career that you want? You mentioned, Anand, earlier in the program that there was a survey. They're looking for someone to drive a van and sell hot dogs. I'm sure the listing probably was a little more complicated than that. It might have been everything from marketing to engagement to customer relations, right? It wasn't just driving around selling food, but there were other elements there. And I think that's what's really important right now, is that we look at how can skill sets be diversified? How can you use one skill, whether it be communication and marketing, in a variety of different fields to be successful?
Yeah. Yang Liang, there's another term that's popped up now. We hear about credential inflation. Many students feel that a bachelor's degree is not enough. They have to get a master's degree. I mean, that adds to cost. It also takes up more time, doesn't it?
Right. Well, I agree. I think, the reality that we lived in is, the reality is that now we have more and more jobs that require high and high credentials, and which why I said earlier that, many of these jobs will require a college degree. Now, that being said, I think, there are two ways to look at this. One is that, as I mentioned earlier, college education now becomes so foundational, it probably should be a necessity rather than a privilege. So we need to expand the access, right, and make it more inclusive. And again, I think for these colleges, they teach, hands-on projects, critical thinking skills, and also some specific skill sets, I think are still very variable. Whereas in trade schools, I think a lot of time and energy has been devoted to learning specific skills that may not be as transferable as what you learn in a college setting, not to mention the network effect. I think that is also very important. Now, second is, I think as society, we do need to think about really what we require our young people to be able to do. So I think, yes, credential inflation now becomes a more of a barrier and a screening device to keep some of the young people out of the workforce. So I think that requires some kind of reflections and really think about what jobs are required. Now, last but not the least, I think really when we think about these automation, AI, and many of these sort of machine replacing human kind of technological advancements, I think, it's unfortunately, we may be able to, bring more sort of manufacturing production back to the United States, but that's not necessarily mean more manufacturing jobs will be open for the actual human beings.
Right. I want to get back to AI in a moment, but Robert, I know you wanted to say something in response to what Imani was saying. Go ahead.
Well, I want to emphasize that people learn in different ways. And by trying to put everybody in the same approach to learning, you're really going to disadvantage people who learn best by doing. So not everyone wants to sit in a classroom all day, even if the tuition is lower, or if they're a low income family. In many places they don't have to pay tuition, but many people like to do things and learn by doing. And so I think it's a mistake to try to put everybody in the same boat. Higher education is great for some people, as I mentioned before, and I think that should be promoted and helped and so on. And we certainly have done that in this country to a very great extent. But what we haven't done is recognize that there are these different ways of learning, and we ought to allow people and help people achieve their learning goals in ways that best suit them.
Yeah. Ryan, to Yan Liang's point about AI, what kind of an impact is it going to have on higher education?
Yeah, well, so before I get to that, let me just make the point that I think what we're arguing for is just some balance to the system. If you actually look at what federal and state governments are investing in accredited colleges and universities, you compare that to what they're investing in work-based learning programs, it's about 1,000 to 1. So for every dollar we're spending on work-based learning, we're spending $1,000 on classroom-based learning. And if you compare a college student on one hand with an apprentice on the other hand, and you ask how much public support are those people getting, for every dollar of public support the apprentice receives, the college student receives $50 of public support. So I don't know whether the right ratio is a 1 to 1 or 10 to 1, but it certainly shouldn't be 50 to 1 or 1,000 to 1. So we need to establish some more balance to the way we think about career launch. And to your question, specifically because AI is about to create a significant disruption, AI is changing the way employers think about entry-level jobs. Much of the menial work that good entry-level workers used to do while they learned the ropes is going away. Employers are going to expect that they'll use AI to do those jobs, and they'll expect them to be able to do higher value client work, project work, product work from day one. And to do that, they'll need prior work experience. So I think what the impact of AI is going to, from high school on, lessen the value of classroom-based learning and increase the value of work-based learning, where students can actually get real work experience in the fields that they're looking to launch their career.
Okay, and that is where we have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That is it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington.